American-supplied weapons like this, Ukraine says it couldn't intercept the nightly Russian drone attack.
In a surprising decision that has stirred reactions around the world, President Donald Trump has declared a total halt on all military support to Ukraine. The choice, which stops a lot of money for military and aid support, has gotten strong responses from leaders around the world, military experts, and political watchers. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky quickly reacted, making a strong statement against the action and urging the world to come together against Russian aggression.
American military assistance has been suspended. The announcement came a few days after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky refused to sign a mineral deal with
President Trump, recognized for his America First approach, explained the halt in aid by saying that the U.S. should not be the main financial and military supporter of Ukraine's fight. During a press conference at Mar-a-Lago, Trump said, "We've provided Ukraine plenty. Other countries, Europe, NATO, they should do more. The U.S. will no longer be Ukraine's source of funds." Trump suggested that he thinks Zelensky hasn't done enough to pursue peace talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin. People who advise his administration on foreign policy have said that keeping the U.S. involved in the war is not good for American taxpayers and does not help to reduce tensions.
Because of what he says was a lack of U.S. security guarantees. The U.S. has supplied around $69 billion worth of weapons like this.
This action follows Trump's earlier remarks about the Biden administration's large backing of Ukraine, which he said was pulling the U.S. into unwanted global issues. During a meeting in the Oval Office last week, Trump said Zelensky was gambling with World War III after the Ukrainian leader showed doubt that talking alone could stop Russian President Vladimir Putin. The meeting caused at least one of the Ukrainian leader's Republican supporters, Senator Lindsey Graham from South Carolina, to openly express his criticism.
Europe should in any case increase its assistance to us because this is primarily in their interests. We fear that Trump will agree with Russia on some kind of...
What I saw in the Oval Office was not respectful, and I'm not sure if we can work with Zelensky again, Graham told reporters outside the White House last week, right after the meeting. After Trump announced the aid pause on Monday night, Graham shared on X that he has worked really hard to keep supporting the Ukrainian people in their fight against the Russian invasion and has shown respect for President Zelensky's leadership during tough times. He then said, "I, like many people, can only offer suggestions. It's President Zelensky's choice to decide if he will take it or not." Trump's choice happens while the White House is pushing Zelensky to work out a ceasefire with Russia and to agree on a deal with the U.S. about its rare mineral resources.
Years. The question now is whether Europe can continue those sorts of supplies.
H.R. McMaster, who used to be Trump's national security advisor and has spoken out against him, mentioned that Putin couldn't be happier because of the problems between the U.S. and Ukraine. What he sees is all the stress on Zelensky, all the stress on Ukraine, and no stress on him, the retired general told CBS News, the BBC's U.S. partner. Mike Waltz, who is Trump's current national security advisor, shared a different opinion when he was on CNN on Monday. He mentioned that Zelensky just had to prove he was prepared to seek peace. At the same time, Democrats who have shown more agreement in backing Ukraine voiced strong feelings about the delay. They said it could hurt the safety of the U.S.
Says it's ready to step up and mobilize more than $840 billion for Ukraine. But can it do that fast enough?
It's a big mistake for Donald Trump to give up against Putin all on his own, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer shared on X. Senator Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts said that Trump is choosing Putin instead of U.S. friends in Europe. The impact is reaching well beyond Washington, causing the U.S.'s allies in the U.K. and Europe to rush to deal with the possible consequences. People in Ukraine were very surprised and upset about the pause in U.S. military help. Oleksandr Mereshko, the head of the Ukrainian Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee, shared with BBC Breakfast that it might lead to dangerous consequences.
And he's obliged. On X, a promise to work for a limited truce under what he called President Trump's strong leadership.
Just hours after Trump announced, President Zelensky held a quick press conference in Kiev, looking clearly upset but determined. He stated that Ukraine would not give in to outside pressure and blamed Trump for making Russia stronger with his choice. This goes beyond Ukraine. This is about democracy, freedom, and what lies ahead for Europe. If the U.S. walks away now, it sends a message to Putin and other strict leaders to keep being aggressive without any limits. Zelensky also contacted U.S. lawmakers asking Congress to step in and restore aid. Many senators from both parties showed their worry about Trump's choice, expressing their disagreement with it.
The match at the White House, he says, was regrettable. It is time to make
The halt in aid happens at an important time in the war. Ukraine has been using a lot of weapons from the U.S., like HIMARS rocket launchers, air defense systems, and artillery shells, to defend against ongoing Russian attacks. Experts say that if the U.S. stops helping for a long time, it could really hurt Ukraine's chances of keeping its defenses strong. Colonel Alexander Medvedev, a Ukrainian defense planner, explained the situation clearly. If the help stops, our soldiers at the front will be left without bullets. Air defenses will become less strong, and Russia will gain the advantage. This choice will lead to loss of life.
I don't care much about what happens to Ukraine, said they needed more from President Zelensky.
The public stuff doesn't matter nearly as much as what are the Ukrainians.
The freeze also impacts economic help, which has supported Ukraine's struggling economy during the war. If the U.S. doesn't provide financial support, Kyiv might find it hard to keep basic services running, pay military workers, and help civilians affected by the conflict. The U.S. choice has sparked quick talks among NATO members and European friends. The European Union, while promising to keep helping Ukraine, has shared worries about its capacity to provide aid at the same level as the U.S. French President Emmanuel Macron made a clear statement: Europe must not allow Ukraine to fail. We need to move quickly to fill any holes in military help.
We need the Ukrainians privately to come to us and say, this is what we need, this is what we want, this is how we're going to participate in the process to end this conflict.
German Chancellor Olaf Scholz also asked for a quick NATO meeting to talk about the crisis. Some European countries are unsure about taking on more financial responsibilities, especially since economic slowdowns continue throughout the continent. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg told Ukraine that the alliance is still dedicated to its defense, but experts think NATO by itself might not be able to keep up the same level of support that the U.S. gave before.
European leaders agreed to find a way to offer President Zelensky a route to peace with security guarantees from Europe and the U.S. Britain's Prime Minister is trying to satisfy Donald Trump.
Moscow has clearly seen Trump's decision as a win for their strategy. Russian state media praised the aid freeze as evidence that Western backing for Ukraine is weakening. Dmitry Peskov, the spokesperson for the Kremlin, said, "We have always said that U.S. participation in Ukraine cannot last. This choice shows that Washington is starting to see its strategic error." People worry that Russia might take this chance to increase its military actions, thinking Ukraine is weaker without help from the U.S. Some reports suggest that Russian troops are getting ready for a possible big attack in eastern Ukraine.
Europe and the U.S. are now on opposite sides of the argument.
Trump's choice has sparked a big political uproar at home. Some of his supporters like his position on cutting foreign aid, but many Republican lawmakers have stepped back from this decision, saying it might lead to serious problems for national security. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, who has supported help for Ukraine for a long time, was very against the freeze. Leaving Ukraine now would be a huge mistake. It would make our opponents stronger and lessen America's role in the world. On the Democratic side, President Joe Biden spoke out against the decision, promising to look into legal options to get around Trump's order and keep helping Ukraine in other ways. This isn't what we stand for as a nation. We support our friends, and we won't let political games weaken our promises.
Hard thing to do business like this.
The shouting match in the Oval Office last Friday ripped away any pretense that it will be easy to bridge the gap between peace and war.
The political consequences are likely to be an important topic in the upcoming U.S. elections, with Ukraine policy turning into a significant disagreement between Trump-supporting Republicans and those pushing for ongoing international involvement. What comes next? The next few weeks will be very important for figuring out what happens with U.S.-Ukraine relations and the wider world situation. Important things to keep an eye on are: will Congress go against Trump's choice and bring back aid through teamwork from both parties? European action. Will NATO and EU countries boost their help to cover the space left by the U.S.? Will Russia increase its attacks, seeing a chance? Is it possible for Ukraine to discover other ways to get military and financial help? How will this choice affect Trump's position as we approach the elections? The halt of U.S. support to Ukraine is an important point not only for the conflict in Eastern Europe, but also for the wider world situation. Friends are looking at what they promised, opponents are changing their plans, and leaders around the world are rushing to deal with the results.
Donald Trump's attempt to force President Zelensky to do it his way has plunged America and its NATO allies into their worst crisis since the alliance was formed just after the Second World
For
War.
Ukraine, the message is simple. Their fight is now tougher. But if the past has taught us anything, it's that Ukraine has overcome challenges before. It's still unclear if they can do it again without support from the U.S. The choice made by the United States highlights a bigger change in how it handles foreign policy, focusing more on what benefits the country rather than its duties to the world. We will have to wait and see if this change brings more stability or more trouble. As everyone looks on, one thing is clear: the risks have never been greater.